The next morning, Sage woke up early, ate breakfast, and then hurried to the carnival. She was meant to meet Madame Zerona at 9 a.m. for training, but she was so excited to start her first day of work that she arrived at 8:30. Ever since she was a little girl, Sage had loved the Ringo Carnival. She adored the Midway games and the cheap prizes they offered. However, it was the rides that took her breath away. Her favorite had always been the Adventure Zone. This attraction was a large obstacle course filled with moving floors, trick mirrors, and tons of plastic balls. This wasn't just a regular obstacle course, though. It was actually a game where the participants searched for hidden gems. Although these gems were nothing more than plastic imitations, Sage felt a rush every time she found one. As Sage entered the front gates, she smiled widely and strutted past the security guard. "Did you get the job then?" the security guard inquired. "Of course," Sage replied in a superior manner as she walked away with her head held high. Although she wasn't usually rude to people, she was willing to make an exception for him. Sage looked around in interest as she walked through the Midway. Most of the rides and game booths had already been assembled. All that was left to do was plug in the machines and get the prizes in order. Even though the rides and booths looked great, the owners were in a frenzy trying to get everything perfect for the carnival's grand opening tomorrow. "Madame Zerona?" Sage called before entering the fortune-telling tent. Sage let out a gasp as soon as she stepped inside. There, in the middle of the brightly lit tent, was Madame Zerona. The crystal ball was upside down as she tried to fix the base with a screwdriver. 2 AA batteries lay on the table beside her. Madame Zerona's face went a deep shade of red as she tried to cover the crystal ball and batteries under the tablecloth. Her attempt to conceal her fraud was done in vain, as a battery rolled off the table and onto the floor. "Sage, I wasn't expecting you so soon," Madame Zerona stammered. "Obviously," Sage thought, as she picked up the battery and handed it to Madame Zerona. "I'm a very punctual person," she finally replied. "We should get started," Madame Zerona said while trying to casually put the crystal ball back into one piece. "I have a lot to teach you. I need my assistant to control the lighting and fog within the tent. Do you have any experience with electronics?" "I've been a part of my high school's AV club for 3 years. It's my passion," Sage replied with rising excitement. "Excellent." Madame Zerona spent the next few hours teaching Sage how to operate the lighting and fog machines, along with other devices which were either cool or creepy. By the end of the day, Sage had mastered the art of phony fortune-telling props. "I'll remember this job for the rest of my life," Sage thought, ecstatic that she was earning money while honing her technical skills. Sage's thoughts were correct. No matter how much she'd want to forget this job, she would remember it forever. People were already lining up for the carnival's opening day when Sage arrived at work. Feeling like an important person, she passed the bystanders and hurried through the front gates. The carnival had come to life. Music blared throughout the area and multicolored lights flashed on the rides. Sage felt a rush of excitement as she headed towards the fortune-telling tent. It was the same feeling she always got when she went to the carnival. "Hurry up and get dressed," Madame Zerona commanded as soon as Sage entered the tent. "I don't want anyone to see you without your costume." Sage suppressed the urge to roll her eyes. Did Madame Zerona really expect me to walk to the carnival in my costume? She thought, as she pulled a long purple dress out of her backpack. In a private section of the tent, Sage put on the dress. It was shapeless and far too long. At least a foot of fabric trailed behind her. Next, Sage clipped 3 purple hair extensions onto her real hair. She smiled as she looked in the mirror. The contrast between her natural blonde hair and the purple extensions looked amazing. "Are you ready?" Madame Zerona called to Sage. "Almost," Sage replied, while pressing on fake nails and then gently applying fake eyelashes along her eyelids. It was Sage's job to stand outside the tent and encourage potential customers to get their fortunes read. She also had to guide the customers inside and then disappear to operate the special effects machines. Although Sage hated deceiving people, she knew it was all just for fun. "Are you ready yet?" Madame Zerona called to Sage in a much more frantic voice. Sage finished applying purple eyeshadow and then emerged from the back of the tent. "Oh, you look wonderful," Madame Zerona exclaimed, "just like a real fortune teller." "Then I'm sure I can pass for a fortune teller's assistant," Sage said with a laugh, before walking towards the tent's entrance. Suddenly, Sage fell over the long hem of her dress. She landed on the ground with a sickening thud. At first, she was surprised by the fall. However, in a few seconds, she was laughing so hard that tears rolled down her face. "I'm so clumsy," Sage admitted as a woman offered her a hand. After taking her hand and pulling herself up, she gasped to discover it wasn't Madame Zerona who stood before her. Sage was deadly still as she stared at the woman. The woman, who was short and somewhat plump, wore a black pleated dress that was adorned with embroidered yellow flowers. She was over-accessorized with large hoop earrings and several beaded necklaces and bracelets. All her jewelry was black. From the deep wrinkles on her face to her long silver hair, Sage assumed she must be over 100 years old. "Who are you, and what are you doing in my lair?" Madame Zerona demanded after she'd hurried to Sage's side and seen the strange old woman who was dressed like a fortune teller. "I am Josephine," the woman answered angrily. "I am a real fortune teller, and I have come to seek my revenge on those who falsely claim to have the powers which I possess." Not the least bit frightened, Madame Zerona looked at Josephine as if she was insane. Despite the chills which Josephine's presence caused, Sage couldn't help but see the irony in the situation. Madame Zerona was obviously not afraid of Josephine because she didn't believe that real fortune tellers existed. "Get out of my lair," Madame Zerona said in annoyance. Josephine tilted her head backwards and laughed. "A lair?" she mocked, while walking around the tent. She lifted up a glass jar that was filled with green leaves and laughed again. "You call this a lair?" Josephine swept her hand over the numerous jars which sat on the shelves. "These are cooking herbs. Nothing more than what you would find in the grocery section of Family Value Superstore." "You can't prove that," Madame Zerona responded, trying to keep calm. Although Josephine was 2 feet shorter than Madame Zerona, she approached her and then looked up to cast a challenging stare. "You are a fraud, Madame Zerona," Josephine said loud and clear. "That's it!" Madame Zerona cried as her face went red with anger. "If you don't leave right now, I'll call security." "I'll leave now, but I shall be back," Josephine remarked, before disappearing through the tent's exit. "What just happened?" Sage asked, while peeking outside the tent to see Josephine marching away. She immediately noticed that a small crowd had gathered, most likely to see what all the commotion was about. Madame Zerona shook her head in confusion. "I have no clue," she replied honestly. "Somehow she knows who I am, but I've never seen her before."